Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. This time we've got the pleasure of watching IlTritaTutto, which roughly translates into garbage disposal in Italian in his Object 140. So this is the Tier 10 Soviet medium tank. And let me think for a second. This is one of the 3 Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks, and there's a lot of confusion surrounding them. The Object 140 is the more mobile. It's got the better top speed limit, at least compared to the T62A. But it has the best gun depression of 6 degrees of all the tanks, which allows you to crest ridge lines and get shots where the other 2 vehicles couldn't. However, this comes at a cost. You have to sacrifice turret armor compared to the T62A. But in this kind of a matchup and at these kind of distances, we can see that the upper plate and the turret armor of the Object 140 held up very well there. IlTritaTutto is putting some shots now into the side of this Tier 10 German heavy tank, the E100, who is a very dangerous player in a very dangerous tank on the enemy team, especially on Ruinberg. Should be able to carve through the city. Now the investment of either side is different. If we look at the matchup here, this is a key of what you're going to have to think of if you want to prepare your strategies in World of Tanks. The enemy team, we're playing on Ruinberg, and that's very much a dominant city map. Have an E100, a T57, a Jagdtiger E100, and a T110 E3. All of those tanks are very likely to go into the town. Now, IlTritaTutto is playing with his friend Loliet, who is playing the other Soviet, well, one of the other Soviet medium tanks, the T62A. What I'm trying to say is that by having 2 out of 4 of the Tier 10 tanks invested in this flank, they could almost expect to lose the town, or at least the town to have more often than not, the town is going to be lost on Ruinberg if they invest all of their forces on the east. So that means that the 2 Soviet Tier 10 medium tanks will have to certainly pull their weight quickly on this ridgeline over at the east if they want to have a good chance of winning this round. So IlTritaTutto is putting some good shots here into the enemy Jagdtiger. Now the armor on the Jagdtiger is very thick, but this Soviet Tier 10 medium tank gets 264 millimeters of penetration with its standard APCR rounds. And that will easily go through the plate on a Jagdtiger, let alone ripping apart the soft side of this Tier 8 French heavy tank, the AMX 5100. So a good result there as they pick apart that vehicle, and they're also putting pressure on their opponents along this flank. One thing that's very important to note here is that IlTritaTutto is showing you some fantastic bush mechanics. Watch as he goes forwards into the bush until it becomes transparent. Then he's able to spot his opponents. So when you see the bush be transparent in front of you, that means you can see through it. And by pulling back behind the bush until you can no longer see through it, that means that the bush will, more often than not, hide your tank, increase your camo rating massively, and allow you to take out your opponents without being spotted. It looks like they have realized just how dominant their tanks can be on this eastern flank, and they want to try and push around and surround the enemies in the town. Now down this line here, you get some fantastic opportunities to pick apart your opponents that like to camp down these alleyways. But before they do that, they've got to deal with this Tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, this ST1. He puts a good first shot in, and a second one, and angles his armor as quickly as he can to get out the way. The ST1 is surrounded, and there's very little that the ST1 can do, putting a single shot into his buddy in the T62A. Unfortunately, IlTritaTutto is unable to kill the ST1 with his first, but thanks to the fantastic rate of fire on the Object 140, he can put a second 100mm shell right through the tank. So he loses his fuel tanks to the enemy STA1, who was hidden until now. Now IlTritaTutto manages to put some revenge shots into the STA1. 2 good hits, ripping apart that Tier 8 Japanese medium tank. Now why I talk about the fuel tanks being important on the Object 140 is because they're at the front of the vehicle, and generally 2 hits into them mean that there will be a fire. And that's why it's quite cheeky to not take fire extinguishers on this tank. I have to admit, Sometimes I've gone up in a blazing inferno in this vehicle when I try and use a premium consumable instead of those fire extinguishers, so watch out for that when you're driving your Soviet medium tanks. And alternatively, when you're engaging an Object 140, its hull armor is only 100 millimeters. It might be very well angled, but it's only 100 millimeters compared to the T-54, the predecessor tank to the Object 140, which has 120 millimeters of armor. That difference means that you can pen an Object 140, whereas quite a lot of the time you can fail to pen the T-54, at least frontally. So take your chances on the front of Soviet medium tanks, and quite often you're also going to set them on fire as well. So this game has pretty much developed how I thought it would. The enemy team has obliterated the town with their Tier 10 advantage, and IlTritaTutto and his buddy Loliet have managed to have equal dominance on the eastern flank. Now, IlTritaTutto has only taken a single shot this game from the STA-1 that has managed to penetrate his tank, so he's still got a huge amount of hit points left. And it's very easy to also forget that he's played absolutely flawlessly, really. 6,300 damage. He shows incredible marksmanship skills that have enabled him to already have done enough damage that if he was to die, he would have felt like he's had a big game. But he's not done yet. The enemy tanks didn't advance through the south, and quite correctly, IlTritaTutto and Loliet did not advance into that gun line of the T-57 Heavy. Now what they're doing is they're creating an ambush. The T-62A is holding the enemies in the front, and that allows the Object 140 to flank around them. He's got to do something fast. They're now 3 versus 7. Make that 3 versus 6. Unfortunately, the T-62A manages to hit him in the side. Loliet picks up a good kill. 3 versus 5. And another nice shot there by IlTritaTutto into the top of the Type 62. Now the T-110E3 is pressing the advantage, and rightly he should. He needs to be aggressive here. They've got the numerical advantage, and the T-62A is wounded. But as soon as you stick your tank around the front, if you don't have a repair kit in the T-110E3, skilled players with rapid-fire guns are going to pick you apart. Oh, what a bounce there off the side of the turret from the enemy Jagdpanzer E100. That could have made a huge difference. But some great play here by the Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks, locking down the T-110E3 and putting in a huge amount of damage. That's 900 damage already into him. Unfortunately, he misses a shot there into the side of the T-110E3, and that means that the Jagdpanzer E100 is able to finish off his T-62A buddy. He takes a hit from the Type 62, but luckily it only does track damage, enabling him to finish off the T-110E3 on the enemy team, putting his damage to over 8,000. But he's still got work to do. He's got 9 heat shells and 3 HE shells in a 1 versus 3 engagement, and the Jagdpanzer E100 is on full health. The first one goes in, doing 353 damage. Will the second heat shell pen his lower plate? Whoa, that's a pretty low roll. I felt like that one could have or should have gone into the enemy Jagdpanzer E100, but his front was very well angled. Now he wants to get a ridgeline between him and his opponent. Take note that the AMX 1390 was seen rushing through the town. He reloads an HE shell, which means that he was caught reloading and couldn't take out the Type 62, but he's going to need to make use of every shell that he has, as the Jagdpanzer E100 has got 1,800 hit points left. What an HE shell into the top of the Type 62 there, taking some pressure off himself and creating this to be a 1 versus 2 engagement. The Jagdpanzer E100 sits there watching. IlTritaTutto thinks about trying to engage the Jagdpanzer E100 and then quickly realizes that this isn't the right time to take on that Tier 10 German tank destroyer behemoth, as a 1390 gets into the cap circle and engages him in the side. He hits him once, misses twice, hits the third. Whoa, gosh, those are not welcome shots to take. And that means that IlTritaTutto is now a one-shot for the enemy Jagdpanzer E100. So the pressure is very much on him now. The AMX 1390 is inside the cap circle. He's got such low ammunition left. The AMX 1390 in theory has 806 hit points left. but that's not going to stop the brave Object 140 here as he decides to load an HE shell. Now, the HE shell has got much higher alpha damage, 420, but much lower penetration at 50, and that is chancy whether you're going to be able to go through even a light tank, the AMX 1390, with your HE shells. I really like his approach here. He's staying hidden for as long as he can, keeping that ridge line on his left to avoid the enemy Jagdpanzer 100. What a penetration into the side of the 1390 there, doing 461 damage, flanking him, surprising the 1390. I think the 1390 thought that he was going to last longer than that, and 2 shots for 806 damage with a 100 millimeter gun that's on the Object 140. What a result there. Unbelievable 461 roll there on the first HE shell, meaning that the second one, if it penetrated, was pretty much a guaranteed kill. So great use of your ammunition here, IlTritaTutto. And you know that you're going to need these heat shells for your final 1 versus 1 with the Jagdpanzer 100. And now while he's going to have to shoot the Jagdpanzer 100 probably at least 6 times, the Jagdpanzer 100 only has to shoot him once. Where's he going to be? We have no idea what that Jagdpanzer 100 has done since he was last spotted. All we can think is that he was probably advancing to here to try and support the 1390, unable to do so because IlTritaTutto used the ridgeline to avoid his fire and secure the 1 versus 1. So he's probably making his way back towards this corner to defend, and there he is. Now amazingly, IlTritaTutto, having 6th sense, spotted the enemy Jagdpanzer 100, but did not get spotted himself. He has the ambush on the Jagdpanzer 100, and let's see how he handles the situation. He goes out round the corner, has the flank of the Jagdpanzer 100, connects his first shell. The Jagdpanzer 100 turns to try to face him, puts his second in, and he is out traversing the track traverse of the Jagdpanzer 100 right now. No, Jagdpanzer, you needed to reverse! Oh, what a disaster there. He is just doing spins. He's trying to create donuts on the ground, and that allows IlTritaTutto to finish him off in style. What a fantastic result at the end of the game. Flawless performance, 11,331 damage that we saw, and I expect there's going to be a little bit extra on that Jagdtiger that he was firing stealth at. IlTritaTutto, thank you so much for sending me this replay. More often than not, people who have pretty cool names like you do not live up to them. But you certainly did. You truly were a garbage disposal unit this game, tearing apart the enemy team and taking advantage of any mistake that they made. The key moments of victory in this round was, well, firstly, IlTritaTutto's flawless aim. I'm pretty sure he aimed every single one of the shots that he fired, and he literally fired all but one of his ammunition perfectly. Secondly, he made excellent use of this bush location. Rewind the video now and go and take a look at it. You can see the exact mechanics that you need to develop if you want to spot your opponents and then pull back behind the bush and shoot them without them seeing you. And then to follow it up, he surrounded his enemies with his T-62A buddy. Got some really effective fire down this line here, which is something that medium tanks often forget that they need to advance and surround their opponents. But not too far. I believe he found himself in this position. If he'd gone forwards, he'd probably turned it into a very ugly situation where the enemy team would have simply rushed round, and I don't think they could have taken out the T-57 Heavy very effectively and probably lost the game. Realizing this, IlTritaTutto pulled back and set up an effective ambush with his buddy Lauliet. Fantastic play here. Down this alleyway, just great synergy. Lauliet was baiting the enemies on this corner, and IlTritaTutto was punishing them in the side, allowing just enough for the enemy tier 10s to have to push down here. Picked apart 2 of the softer tanks, the supporting vehicles that you quickly want to get out of the game, because even if they're on 200 hit points, they've still got a very effective gun, especially when you're not a very heavily armored tank, and taking them out. The IS-8 that we saw there had a big impact on the battle. After this, there were some excellent clutch plays on the corner versus T110E3. It's a shame that his buddy in the T62A... What, did he lose his head? Oh, no. Lawlia, you lost your head in that battle. You literally gave everything for the team. But then, the T10E3 went down because of it. And it enabled IlTritaTutto to make some clutch plays here using the right ammunition choice. If he had not loaded those HE rounds, then he probably wouldn't have had the rounds that he needed to deal with the Jagdpanzer 100 at the end. The way that IlTritaTutto moved up here, went round the back of the buildings, and then used this ridge line to stay hidden from the AMX 1390 long enough, and then used this ridge that comes out here to evade fire from the Jagdpanzer 100, to close the distance, penetrate 2 clutch HE shells on the 1390, and then finally win the one-on-one against the Jagdpanzer 100. It was just a great game. So thank you so much for submitting this one. Let's just take a quick look at the post-game stats. So IlTritaTutto picked up the top gun with the final kill of the game, a steel wall medal, showing that the Object 140's armor, when used effectively, can still be resilient, especially when you're top tier in a matchup like this. A defender medal, high caliber medal, tank sniper medal for choosing to engage at long ranges where you're often going to be safer with the angled armor on this tank, and a Confederate medal as well as a top gun. That really shows that you have been a hero when you've taken 6 kills yourself, but also enabled 6 kills to happen for your team. 1,588 base experience, and this was just shy of 12,000 damage, meaning that he must have hit that Jagdtiger at least a couple of times. Yes, there we go. He ended up doing a huge amount to the enemy Jagdtiger with 6 penetrations, 1,488 damage. So we can certainly all learn a lot from this replay, and it'll probably help out a lot of you who are maybe trying out this tank for the first time in the domination game mode. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this replay. If you did, please consider giving this video a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see another killer Object 140 replay, then simply click up here and you can go through to Austin QQ dominating a game in his Tier 10 Soviet medium tank, probably one of my favorites in the game. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the Object 140 compared to the other Soviet medium tanks. Do you prefer the turret armor of the T62A or the gun depression and the slight mobility increase that you get with the Object 140? And also, if you're someone who hasn't got any Tier 10 tanks, but you've been trying them out in the domination game mode, what's it been like for you? Is it inspiring you or making you want to get to Tier 10 tanks finally? Or are you a little underwhelmed by them in the domination game mode? Let me know what you guys think. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.